an intervention on drunkenness drunk. We have a political class that will shake the boots of our neighbors because we arbitrarily want to kick them out. We have a political class that will insult each other. We have a political class that will dream up assassination plots.
Are those the parks of democracy?
So those are parks of democracy, yes, parks of free speech, but that space has been abused. Okay. So it is like going to a golden room with a golden toilet, but you have no toilet manners. That is where the problem is. It will still smell as bad. It does not matter how much gold we have on it.
All right, Rosalind, this question that this group of activists are asking, if the constitution has failed Kenya, or Kenyan leaders have failed the constitution, where do you think it comes into play in this country, given the fact of this talk or push for a constitutional referendum to change the constitution already? Is the Kenyan constitution ripe for change or amending?
I think it is ripe for a change, because remember, we enacted our constitution in 2010. We are almost 10 years down the line. And remember, when we were passing the constitution, there were issues that we have 20% that needs to be changed, as opposed to the 70% that you were saying was good. But from where we sit, you have heard people saying that actually there are some sections that we actually need to change. And the push for a referendum comes in because there are those sections that are protected in law under Article 255.
Yes.
And these are the sections that are actually leaders are having issues with. For example, the structure of parliament. Remember, now we have an imperial parliament. The structure of presidency. We have the Bill of Rights, which now gives us all these rights that we have, devolution and others. So because these are not sections that can actually be amended through a parliamentary initiative, that is why this push has gained momentum. But if you look at it, even in terms of the composition of parliament, we have an imperial parliament that is now dead like a dodo. We are not seeing anything happening in parliament. The only time we hear legislators speak as one is when there is an interest that is touching on them, just like you've talked about the housing allowance and now the money, the night out that are pushing. But when it comes to real issues affecting Mwananchi, the Wanjiku, then we don't see our legislators coming out to speak about this. And that is why you've seen so many proponents of the constitution coming out and saying, why don't we amend this constitution? Why can't we have an hybrid system like what we had before we enacted this constitution, where now we can also reduce the elective and appointing seats that we have, because we are having a ballooning wage bill that we cannot sustain. And this wage bill, 2% contributes to salaries and allowances for state officers and top civil servants. Why can't we amend this constitution and just try to see, let's select the areas that we think that really needs constitutional change, and those that can actually go through a parliamentary initiative. What
you say is very important. A lot of focus coming onto these supremacy battles, especially between the two houses of parliament. But a lot of critics are saying that our push for a referendum is based on greed by the political class. It is focused on the governance structures, especially the executive only. I mean, is that a fact? Is that the focus, the fulcrum of this push?
I agree with them to some extent, because remember, the constitution we have is a pure presidential system where it's winner take it all. And that is why we've had the fights in 2013, and we had the same in 2017, where the presidential candidates, once you lose and you go home. You are not in parliament. But if we had a parliamentary system of a hybrid, then you will have had the losers actually being in parliament. But the core of this issue is a function of the Senate and the National Assembly. The drafters of the Constitution wanted an upper house, that is the Senate, that was supposed to checkmate the National Assembly. But we had leaders who went to Naivasha the last minute, who watered down the functions of the Senate, not knowing that they were actually going to find themselves in that same Senate that they were taking away the roles. So now that is where this conversation is coming, where we find we have a Senate which is not powerful, and we have a very powerful National Assembly that cannot actually be tamed. And that's why we are now seeing senators threatening now to go to court. The other day, the president signed the appropriations law, yet we don't have the Division of Revenue Act that is supposed to split money between the two levels of government. And they're very comfortable. The National Assembly, they think they've done well because the national government will not be affected. That is the issue is going to affect the counties. So for them, national government, which is their work, is actually comfortable. Yeah.
Bwana Wakili, how do you think Kenya has progressed 29 years on after Saba Saba 1990? Do you think, how do you think the Kenyan democracy has grown in the Kenyan state?
First of all, Ben, welcome back.
Thank you.
Secondly, I pay tribute to those who lost their life, those who sacrificed, those whose blood watered the tree that we are harvesting the fruits today. 29 years later, we live on. The nation grows strong, although it is saddening that some problems that they tackled back then are still here with us. But be it as it may, I think we need to also critique the Saba Saba, whatever their strong points and their weak points.
Okay.
The bigger chunk of those people who pursued or pushed for Saba Saba pushed it with only one agenda. They pushed it with President Moi in their minds. And when Moi exited the scene, there was confusion. And it is that confusion that engulfed the Saba Saba team that is still here with us to date. But that is history, and we can either choose to learn from it, or we live with it as it is, and the consequences will be there. We are feeling them. Coming back to our constitution, we gave ourselves a constitution 9 years ago. It is fairly a liberal constitution. It is a progressive document. The bad thing is that the people who are used to implementing a constitution without constitutionalism have captured us again in this new constitution. People who are used to running things with the messiah mentality, where it is the big man, the same people you hear them saying today, President bring us development, or Deputy President bring us development, have not taken the coffee that is the new constitution. And that is why, even as we discuss about the changes in this constitution, we must ask ourselves, you can never change a dress you have not fitted and realized where you have grown hips and where your legs are tall, for you to know what to fit or what to cut or what to add. Look, we do not have an institution that has done constitutional audits to tell us this is where the problem is, this is where the problem is not. Then,
so is that a problem? Are
it
we
is a
working
problem
blindly?
because it is a problem because constitutional amendments worldwide should be people-centered and people-driven. But what do we have here? We have a clamor for constitution which is hollow, and it is full of hubris, because everybody says we want a referendum. Nobody has stopped for a moment to address us and say, when the referendum comes, I will say this is what we want. We are not addressing the contents. All of us are about the form. It should come in a cuboid manner. But the other thing that people must realize is that constitutional changes are not supposed to be political strongly. There are those constitutional changes that can be done through parliament and should be achieved through consensus. We should not push the country to a highly political cycle, because by doing that, we will just take the political temper in the country to a next level. And then again, lastly, there is a historic, a milestone case known as Francis Ndianabo versus the Attorney General. It is a Tanzanian Court of Appeal case. It is normally, it has always given, buttressed the point that constitutions are living documents. A constitution, and ours, that life has been remitted through Article 256. Therefore, nobody should feel shy when we talk about a constitutional change. But what we should stress on is that they should be changes that affect and help mwananchi to be better, as opposed to be changes that create jobs for boys or tries to recycle some stale leaders.
Dismas, what's your take on the push for the constitutional change, for the referendum?
Well, for me, I think the push to have a referendum is no solution to the crisis that we are facing today. you can have the best document in the world, but if the leadership determines right from the word go to abuse it, then it serves no purpose. Like Kipchumba has indicated, when Kenya was struggling to get a new constitution, we were not really struggling to get a new constitution. We wanted President Moi out. And the late Mishuki admitted in public that in fact we did not need a new constitution. We wanted Moi out. So even the people who are pushing for a referendum today, or they want a new constitution, it's not about the interest of Mura or Wanjiko. They want to create positions for themselves in that constitution. So essentially, as the entire nation called Kenya, we may succumb to their selfish interests.
From what you're saying and backtracing what Wakili is saying, how do Kenyans take back the narrative?
The Kenyans must wake up and smell the coffee. And the Kenyan voter, I think, is one of the most irrational human beings in the world. Because you wake up early in the morning, and because you've been told about something called T-Beam or Tialala, then you decide to vote mediocrity into the National Assembly and into the Senate. And then you expect some miracles. I mean, it's the same Kenyans who are enjoying now buyer's remorse. There are so many governors that Mark Bichacha has got the alacrity to mention here, so many MPs, members of the National Assembly and Senate, who've been in that house, but they've never, ever opened their mouth to make a contribution, to engage in an economic conversation. But when you see them at Finros, they insult everybody. They insult the president, the deputy president, the CS for Interior, the PS for Interior, as if by those insults, the Mura is going to get more money in the pocket. You know, the reason why South Korea, and you know, it's a pity we keep on going to South Korea and Singapore. The reason why those economies are thriving, because the member of the cabinet, when you look at the profile of the cabinet ministers, it's like, it's Ivy League, MBAs, engineers, top lawyers. But in Kenya, who do you have in the cabinet? It's people who suspect themselves. Because at some stage you are told there are a number of cabinet ministers have engaged in corruption. Now you want out of these cabinets who are actually the corruption architects. Then we go to the National Assembly. We are told that we have got criminals domiciled at the National Assembly. Now, are those the same guys you expect to build this nation? When you look at those people, when a conversation comes around food security, all of them are quiet. Radio silence. When you have the conversation around the budget on allocation of resources, they're in the bathrooms receiving money, or they're in rallies outside here. And then the same people, when the president goes to Eldoret, wanasema rais tunaomba tulete maendeleo, as if Kenyatta is supposed to go to the family and get resources. Now, with those kind of people, then it's no wonder that Ethiopia is going to beat us. Even Burundi is going to beat us. And there's a genuine fear, that with this kind of leadership we have today, in 10 years' time, Burundi will be ahead of us.
Mark, when you look at these pictures on the screen, back to that day in 1990, I remember that day I was in nursery school. Kenyans were very committed to the cause. We don't see that commitment today in dealing with the issues that we talk about every day on national television. We hear issues of state capture, runaway corruption in government, ballooning wage bill, and all these things. We don't see the same kind of commitment from the people themselves, even in this push for referendum. And the referenda we've had in the past, in 2010 and in 2005, they were still very political driven, not people driven.
Yes. You know that question, actually, when I look at my points here, it's among my points. The biggest problem we have in this country is the people. The people of Kenya have traded what the national agenda they used to have for personal agendas. I call it the mentality of building a mansion in the middle of a river of sewage, which is what we do all the time. If you look at what most Kenyans do, you'll jump over a river of sewage, jump over an unbuilt road, drive through a portal to get to your 6-bedroomed mansion in Syokimau. That's madness. It's madness. Because why are you creating an island when you could live in a whole country where wherever you live makes sense? Now that personal mentality, that focus on my own personal development is what is eating this country up. In this country, any person who looks at corruption looks at it this way: when will it be my turn to eat? If you want to prove me right, when Safaricom had a glitch in its system, how many Kenyans were corrupt? How many Kenyans were corrupt? half of the people who knew about that story signed on without thinking twice. They were ready to rob the biggest institution business in this country at the drop of a hat. That's the kind of people we have. Number two, the problem also is that the Kenyan people are not organized around issues. Okay?
Right.
So the typical Kenyan, if you ask them what they believe in, do they think that we need to focus on climate change? They have no opinion. Do they think that we should become an economy that is protective of the poor and the weak in society, or should we become entirely capitalist? They have no idea. Do they have ideas about whether we should integrate or disintegrate into our smaller nations? So there's the Luo nation, Kamba nation. They have no idea. So as long as people are not organized, there is no way to push things forward. So the only issue that Kenyans want to organize around, and that's what civil society is pushing today, and every other politician is trying to push, is a fight against corruption. But you see, that's not a thing. You understand? Because we fight against corruption, and then what? Because you've got to have an agenda. The other thing that is troubling our country is we have this idea that 50 years makes us a young democracy, and therefore our teenage behaviors and our bad behaviors are allowed.
Are justified.
You understand? How old is China in terms of democracy? How old is Singapore? How old is South Korea? How old is Vietnam? How old, in fact, is Rwanda, just across the pond? So let's be clear. You cannot have lived 50 years in the world and you're still going for, what was that thing on Sunday afternoon, jam session, and we congratulate you. Kenya is a country that is stuck at jam session, doing teenage things in an adult world, and that's the problem. But we need to wake
Teenage
up,
crisis.
yes, to one reality, that in the past, Kenya succeeded because most of the countries around it were constantly at war or were lazy. Those countries are waking up. Okay, and they are getting their act together. We are not going to skim by acting the way we are. What we need to do, pretty quickly, in a nutshell, is reviewing the constitution is good, it's your right. Review it every year if you want. But the thing we need to review most is the people. Because the issue is, if you wake up in the morning, early in the morning, and you go vote for a guy who writes things on his hair when he's going to an airport, and you go vote for a guy who you speak better English than. It is only in Kenya where the foolish people, the foolish people are in parliament and all the professors are demonstrating outside. What is wrong with you people? And that's the issue.
All right.
Ben, Mark Bishop has committed murder, and we cannot allow that to go.
Where's the body?
When the civil society members are fighting against corruption, and we know for a fact that the people in leadership steal up to a third of our budget, and corruption is a threat to our national security. There is no way we are going to allow Ben to say that that's not a cause. That's a cause. In my view, if actually we are able to kill corruption in Kenya, then we'll not be afraid of Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi beating us. Corruption squanders a third of our budget, and anybody who is fighting corruption must be given a pat on the back. And again, why would Mark Bishachi want to penalize somebody? If you bought a piece of land in
Are
Syokimau,
civil society organizations fighting corruption?
well, you know, maybe we may
wasting
ask
their
ourselves that they're achieving success. But you know, he made a point again which you can't allow to pass. If somebody has bought a piece of land in Syokimau and he's put up a 6-bedroom house, what is the big deal? That's prosperity.
You see, let me explain to you this much so you understand, okay? There are two ways to develop, okay? And let me give you a lesson in history. In the 1600s, during the Renaissance period, there was a big debate as to whether you should have private opulence and public squalor, or you should make the public spaces just as good so that wherever you lived in that nation, it was good for you. Now, every nation that has got high happiness index, has high per capita GDP, has addressed the issue that you cannot jump over rivers of sewage, go through potholes to arrive into your 6-bedroom house. And that's what I'm addressing. So congratulations for your 6-bedroom house in the middle of squalor. But that, I'm telling you, as a nation, you've done nothing.
No, but again,
But let me just interject for something. Just something. There are things at times Mark gets emotional and says them, which are against. We are a capitalist democracy, and that in itself means that if you can build a 50-bedroom house it is not your business to know whether the road is good or bad. What we must address, we the people are the owners of power. We are the sovereigns. We have given agents who are our leaders to do the job of fixing the road.
But in the UK, our former colonialists, colonizers, whatever you may call them, it is a capitalist society, but still they have worked on their systems. And other countries in the West where leaders and political leaders don't use a lot of very long convoys, they can use public transport.
Then,
it's the same system.
Then there is a risk when you don't do, and that's why when you are writing a thesis or a dissertation, there is a place, chapter 3 or chapter 4, where you do what we call comparative study. It is called comparative so that people can assess the stability of your mind compared to other people globally.
All right.
When you compare ourselves 50 years and where Britain was 50 years after independence, or the USA, that is what we should be addressing.
Then why don't you compare to Singapore?
But what I'm saying is this. No.
Compare with South Korea.
Bichachi, you have talked about.
Can you compare with South Korea and
That's
Singapore
what I'm
and
saying.
Malaysia?
When we compare ourselves with those ones, that is when we should write notes. But we cannot compare ourselves to a country that has been independent since it was.
Let's do Singapore.
Ben, yes, that's the thing.
Systems
And that's why I'm coming there. The problem with us is not the systems.
All right.
We put in place very good systems. We come up with, Kenyans have the best of ideas, if you ask me.
Okay.
Go to these reports and read the ideas.
Okay.
The problem is, look at how we implement our ideas. We came up with the best idea in the constitution, that what is the role of a member of parliament? Oversight, legislate and represent. The danger is here in oversight. You get a man who has been selling mitumba in Gikomba. How do you want him to oversight a man who has been in treasury for 20 years? At times, when I read the constitution, I read a problem there. The other thing is this.
That's a good point.
The other thing is this, Ben. Yes. Let me just finish. The issue that we are organized around our turn to eat, it has killed the opposition. As we celebrate Saba Saba, that back then we had an opposition that had a conscience. Look at what we are having now. We have an opposition when every time they are given a chance to be in the government, what do they do as their first order of business? To start scouting around for tenders and eat the 10%. That is where the problem is.
I don't agree with you. We don't have an opposition currently in this constitution. We have a minority and a majority. So when you talk about an opposition, we don't have a clear-cut opposition. Actually, it is just a term used to clarify that these are the people not in government and these are the people in government.
Majority and minority.
Yes, but now when it comes to the constitution, what we need to talk about is that it is driven by the political class. Because if you look at the constitution, chapter 1, it talks about the supremacy, the people. So the power is donated to the political class, the executive and the other arms. But that is where we forget about this and think that we are superior to the people who put us in those positions. And that's why anything we initiate, we forget about the people who have actually donated that power to us to exercise on their behalf.
All right, let's switch gears now and remain in the same vicinity but a different issue as Kenyans mark Saba Saba, 29 years on. A lot has changed.